lost James, but I think we'll open the meeting anyway. So good afternoon and welcome everyone. I'll hand over to Anne Galloway.
E te hui, whae te mātauranga kia marama. Kia whae take nā mahi katoa. Aroha atu, aroha mai. Tātou, ia tātou katoa. For this gathering, we seek knowledge for understanding, have purpose in all we do, stand tall, be strong, and let us show respect for each other.
Kia ora. Thank you, Anne. So today we have one apology from Phil Major. Are there any other apologies for early departure? No. So Sarah, would like to move it? Seconder, Tim. So we're moving and seconding an apology for Phil Major. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? That's carried. Right, you got away with it, Phil. I'll just remind everyone to be vigilant. If you have any declarations of interest, to please declare them. And item 3, confirmation of the previous minutes. Do I have a mover for those? Thanks, Tim. And Melanie seconded. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Opposed? That's carried. So today there's no public forum, no deputations, and there's no petitions. Items 7 and 8 are the minutes for the Banks Peninsula Water Management Zone Committee and the Selwyn Waihora Zone Committee minutes for September. So I'll move those. Do I have a seconder? Mike, all those in favour say aye. 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 Opposed? That's carried. And that takes us to item 9. And it's the hearings panel report to the Three Waters Infrastructure Committee on the proposed waste management and minimisation plan. And that panel was chaired by Jimmy Chen with Jake McClellan and Melanie Coker. So I'd like to invite Jimmy to give us a bit of a brief on the process.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Chair, my fellow councillors, I believe the Chair and all Three Waters Infrastructure Environment Committee councillors have read all the documents of this item. So I just want to highlight the crucial point as follows. The first one, the purpose of this report is to present to the Three Waters Infrastructure Environment Committee the hearings panel recommendations following the consultation and the hearing process on this draft waste management and minimization plan. The hearing panel consists of myself as a chairperson, my fellow councillor Melanie Coker, and the councillor Jake McLennan as the panel. And also we have staff consists of Teresa, Davy, Tisa, and Rowan, etc. The hearing panel we convened on both the Monday, 14th September, and on Thursday, 17th September, 2 days, to consider and deliberate all the submissions received on the proposal, which means the hearing panel we have reviewed 89 in total written submissions, draft waste management and minimization plan 2020, analysis and submissions, and the City Council the waste assessment last year, as well as the hearing panel we heard from 12 oral submissions and asked questions and clarifications. The oral submissions were largely consistent with the point raised in the written submission. Overall, submitters support the vision and our objective of the draft plan. However, they encourage the council need to do more and to meet the targets quickly. So if you review the chair's the report, you will see the 5.4.1 to the 5.4.6, some of the key issues that were raised through the submissions. So this particular regarding to the better communication and the education, and also the central government, local government should be working together for implement this kind of plan, and also investigate increased recycling options like soft plastic and e-waste, etc. But during the hearing panel, the consideration and the deliberation, some of the key issues that were addressed are follows. So, particularly, if you review those paragraphs, the 6, and all those details in here. But I just want to highlight several points. First one is because their particular concern strengthen those messages in key part of plan, because number of the submissions were on items they were already included within our draft plan, the action plan. So these items were not sufficiently visible. Also, they were the wordy could be altered to be clear. So that's why particular if you review 6.1.1, those bullet point, we can see they have the change. The other one is a particular the amending the original draft the plan, to improve the readability, because these changes reflect some other group, including because we received the 12 oral submissions, review those submissions. There were quite a few from schools, from the churches, from the community. They all kind of the different, but all actively involved in the waste minimization and recycling. The third one is I need to highlight, particular why we remove the action plan from this draft plan, because we consider those action plan to be regularly update the final statutory the waste management and the minimization plan. So no longer included in this action plan. Instead, we use how we will achieve the vision to provide an introduction to the action plan. So the summarize, you can see the 6.1 and the 6.1.7. So in here, based on the new revised action plan, we did have covered the 5 key areas have been altered to support this strengthen the messaging. But also regarding to those action plan, we still would like to be more up to date, more to meet the statutory requirement, and also based on hearing panel recommendation. We review all those documents. We unanimous, still would like to ask the Three Water Infrastructure Committee can adopt this revised the final version of plan, and also in consider for the future delivery of this the action plan. So we have recommend to the finance and the performance committee. Particular one is regarding to all the kind of the funding mechanical design to meet the future need. Second is regarding to because quite a few feedback they would like to to diversify those three really big, even to increase those quantity, etc. So might consider in the future more kind of flexibility, the size, and also to separate the glass collection. Third one is opportunity increase the quantity and the viable input for organic processing. Last one is expansion of the education for the school and the organization. So in here, I particularly would like to acknowledge my fellow councillors, the Melody Coker and Jack Manene for their great efforts. Also appreciate the staff for your the great effort, particularly for Teresa Woody for your great job. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jimmy. That was a very good roundup. I'm just going to, I know Yanni's got a question, but I'll ask Melanie and then Jake to perhaps just add anything if you want to. Don't feel you have to, since you're on the panel. You're okay, Melanie.
No, it was excellent actually to be on that hearing panel, and I thought actually the consultation was really great as well, because when the staff went out to they came directly out to residents groups and explained the whole process of why they were going about this new plan and the changes that have happened that people don't know about, like the effect of the national sword, etc. in China. So I thought that part of it was good. But from the presentations, I think one of my favourite ones, and I can't remember the school, but the school that they had a whole video about doing composting, and they were really keen, a lot of schools are keen on having organics bins in the school, and they haven't had them till now, so that was quite good to get the kids coming in. But yeah, I think Jimmy's really said the rest of it. But a lot of it was, a lot of people talked about specific issues that were better for the action plan that got pulled out of the waste minimisation and management plan, but to become separate, so that some of those things that they were keen on knowing about became clearer and more easily identified in the plan, rather than kind of being hidden away where it's harder to find. So I think Teresa did a good job of, in a short space of time, of rewording it and making things much better.
Yeah. Oh, great.
Yeah, staff did do a really good job in what was clearly big, borrowed and stolen staff resource, I suspect, in terms of getting the plan written. And it was pretty clear from the submissions that a lot of what people wanted us to do really fitted more comfortably into the service review that's underway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Oh, well, thanks, guys, for doing that. I know that's quite a time commitment being on these hearings panels, although there's always good stuff to learn from being on them, so appreciate the time that you've put in. Thanks, Jimmy. So, questions? Yanni?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the work that you've done on this. I guess one of the things I find most strange about it is in the executive summary, it talks about targets that were set in 2013.
So we might need staff at the table.
But I haven't been able to find any targets. So I was really keen to know what the waste reduction targets we're setting around curbside waste going to landfill, around the organics and the recycling, and where they are set in this plan. And if they're not set in this plan, then why not?
The original draft had the targets added into it, which were for the next LTP. We took them out because there's the LTP is still under development, so that's why there aren't specific targets now set.
So I don't know how we'll measure success of this plan.
The success of the plan will be through the action plan. In the same way of setting targets around anything, if you don't have a plan to achieve it and you know exactly how you're going to be able to respond to the targets, then it's not necessarily going to add any value. We were producing a plan with an incredibly tight time frame, and today was the deadline, and so the focus on it was to complete it at speed, but in a way that could respond to a heavily changing environment, and we did not believe it would be useful to add targets into that. So the focus is on achievement against the action plan. So it's actions as opposed to targets. So we had targets set, and I won't be able to say the exact years because I haven't tried to memorise it, but the targets that were set before literally haven't been achieved around waste reduction. So we've set them in the past and it wasn't achieving the right thing. And at the moment we're in an environment, a broader worldwide environment of significant change and massive opportunity. But we would be setting targets without really understanding the impact that central government and other wider forces around climate change action and rethinking resource use would actually have. So that's the only reason we haven't. We want the targets to be meaningful.
So I think one of the key questions we asked people was, in terms of the targets, are you satisfied with no progress against the targets? And people were like, no. And then we removed the targets. But I thought we'd actually achieved the organics and the recycling targets. We just hadn't achieved the waste target.
Yeah, we had achieved some of the targets from the previous plan. There was just one key one, which was around the waste to landfill, that wasn't. But also we hadn't set one of the targets because we were doing well, and that's changed. And it is just we're in a changing environment. I don't know what you're referring to about that.
Sorry, the waste to landfill obviously was impacted quite heavily by the earthquake sequences, but the other targets we reached. But just to reiterate what Teresa's saying is that the environment we're in at the moment, there's so much change happening, as well as the government, the proposed changes with the regulations. It's to put a number on it at this stage.
It's too difficult.
We wouldn't know where it was going to land.
Yeah.
Some of these regulations that they're talking will be in a couple of years, but we will still put targets in the LTP for what we can put targets on.
There'll be some things that will start really, really soon, like the waste levy is going to come into effect really soon, and that will have an impact. But yeah, our focus was on meaningful action. That's why no specific additional targets were put.
Final question is just like, we've had the EcoCentral feasibility study about the glass as being an urgent issue to address. How soon can we get a system in for glass? Does this, if we agree to this today, does that ensure that we do actually go ahead with that?
We've requested from EcoCentral their feasibility study. We've had an executive summary from them with no detail about the glass option. So at the moment, the way the contract sits with EcoCentral, it's in their control. So the service delivery review will look at whether that remains with EcoCentral or if there's a better option, which would look at that separate glass collection. Nationally, there is a move away from commingled, having glass collected with the other recyclables, and there's a national standardisation which is looking at the best practice for councils. We seem to be ahead in other aspects, but that is what we'll be looking at in the service delivery review, but we don't have control of that at the moment.
So that's a piece of work that's underway at the moment, and it's mentioned in the report, so it means that it has been highlighted and we're all aware of it.
It is specifically noted in the action plan, so it will be reported on. And yes, the service delivery review will be, the scope of that will come to, I mentioned the Finance and Performance Committee at the start of November. So.
Right. Thanks, Yanni. Any other questions on the report? No. No, it's a really very good report, and I'd also like to thank staff as well, and don't like singling people out, but Teresa, I know that you were doing this a lot as well as the Three Waters Section 17A review, and they were both on tight timelines, so I know you were under a lot of pressure, and thank you very much. I think this is a very good, well-structured report. So we've got the set of recommendations in front of us here. Do we have anyone? Jimmy, will do that? Yes.
Okay.
I think so. Hearing span, yes, I think it's more than appropriate. Melanie, would you like to second it? Is there any discussion? Yanni?
Yeah, I think like it's obviously important to do the assessment, and we've done the assessment. I think one reflection is when we went to the 3-bin system, there were some people that were worried that when we went to the red bin, that we wouldn't actually reduce the amount of waste going to landfill. It's a lot easier for people to put stuff in a red bin than it was into the plastic bag. So in some ways, those concerns have been realised. And I know we've had the earthquake, but I do think if you look at the trends and what you're seeing happening now, the red bin does actually make it a lot easier for waste to go to landfill. I appreciate the work that's been done on this. Rather than get into a big debate now about the targets, I think it is important that we do actually address those targets as soon as possible, because I think we do need something to measure our progress against. And although we haven't met the waste to landfill, actually we did do really well on the organics and the recycling up until recently. So, you know, we should recognise that and celebrate that. But I do think it's important we have targets so the community can measure us against progress. Thank you.
Thank you. I think too that what came out of this was that it was really heartening to see the communities getting really involved in this, and the interest is high, particularly in recycling. And I think that's a really good signal. So I think we just got to keep that profile up, and particularly they're really interested in the auditing of the bins too, of the yellow bins, because people want those stars, not just because I've got one, but everyone wants one. So I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. Well done. Item 10. Welcome Helen for the Three Waters report.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I just had a couple of points to raise in here. The first one is to note that the Central Government Water Reform Programme and the delivery plan has been submitted to Department of Internal Affairs, but we haven't yet heard back. They are promising that we'll hear back by the end of October. And just a reminder that that is about the 40 million grant. Most of that's going into water supply renewals or wastewater renewals across the city. So the water supply mains renewals are Riccarton Road, out in Akaroa, and the main that supplies Littleton, so that goes up to the tunnel. In terms of wastewater, those are also across the city in Edgware and New Brighton, Linwood and Harewood, so that's some extra work that will be coming. In addition, we've got the reduction of inflow and infiltration into both Akaroa and Devoshal's wastewater systems, and that of course is in preparation for upgrading the wastewater plants out there. There's also some operational funding which will go into deferred maintenance of our pump stations, a comprehensive assessment of a number of our reservoirs across the water supply system, and some extra work on CCTV of our wastewater system. So there's quite a lot of extra work there to deliver, and we're all waiting and poised, ready to go with that. In terms of water safety plans, you've been updated a couple of times on the delivery of those across the community water supplies that we look after. Just to remind you that, if for those who haven't heard, that Judy Williamson is no longer the drinking water assessor for Christchurch. She's resigned and taken up another position. So our new drinking water assessor is Matt Parkinson from Waikamply. We know Matt, and we've been working with him because he led the panel that assessed the Christchurch water supply water safety plan. So we had submitted the Akaroa plan to Judy, and she had some comments on that, and we resubmitted it in the middle of September, but that has now gone to Matt at Waikamply, and we are waiting on his response. So he has indicated that he's looking at a range of issues beyond those that have been flagged by Judy. So we will probably delay the submission of the Wainui plan until we've heard back from Matt as to what he thinks of the Akaroa plan. So the Wainui one was to go in November, but we may wait a week or so and see if we can get those other comments back. The Christchurch one, of course, is still due to go up in December, and we don't anticipate any delay with that one. Looking out at the wastewater plant, we've just made a note there that midge season is coming up, so we're doing some planning to reduce the number of midges over the summer period. It has been a very mild winter, so we are anticipating more midges across those ponds, which of course the birds will love, but more midges than we've had in the previous couple of years, and we're doing some work on that. In terms of the big capital program, we've of course got the wellheads going and the upgrades to the reservoirs and the renewals across the water supply system, but we're also coming to the end of the Littleton Harbour wastewater scheme, so that's to eliminate all of the wastewater discharges into Littleton Harbour, and it's good to see that work progressing. The other one that people are aware of is the Turm Street brick barrel, which ran into a few problems. So when we were repairing what is virtually a heritage item down Turm Street for the wastewater, they did encounter some problems, but they've got their methodology back on track for that one. And the report updates you also on the extensive stormwater basins in the Upper Heathcote. And anybody who's been out there will see that those stormwater basins are not only doing a great job in terms of flood mitigation, looking after the quality of the stormwater that's coming into the Heathcote River, but they're also providing a fantastic recreation resource and ecological benefits. And when we come to talk about the waterways, some of that we may touch on. So I'm happy to take questions, and then I'll hand over to Belinda to talk about the waterways report.
Thanks, Helen. Sam?
Just one quick one, Helen. So in terms of the change of the water assessor, you mentioned there would potentially be more issues raised, or there could be more issues. Are we worried about consistency between assessors in terms of what that might do to delaying our work even further?
No, we're not worried about consistency because central government and the Ministry of Health have indeed been having an oversight of all of the plans to ensure that consistency. However, I think what's happened is that because Matt has to sign this off and approve it, he's starting from first principles, so he's taking the time to do a thorough assessment of the report,
right,
rather than just accepting Judy's list of outstanding items and checking
so
those off. So it's just taking a little longer.
Right, okay. But in terms of what he's assessing against, we'd be pretty comfortable that there wouldn't be too much of a change in an approach.
I'm reasonably confident of that because they have had this oversight of other water safety plans and the drinking water assessors across the country to ensure that consistency.
Okay, so then just the last one is, if we did have issues with that, is there a mechanism or a way forward to challenge I guess, his approach, or are we literally stuck with that assessment?
So as part of the assessment, there's always an ongoing conversation. So there'll be a number of questions, and we'll always be given the opportunity to respond. So it is a good process, and we have worked very well with Matt Parkinson before. So I'm quite confident that we'll work well with him on this one.
Perfect. Thank you.
I was just wondering, Helen, when you talked about I think it was the water main repair in Edgware, can you tell me what streets do you know?
I can come back to you on that. There's a number of streets affected for
Yeah.
the water main there.
Because of course we've just had all the downstream effect.
I promise I'm not digging up ones that were
Okay.
resealed following the downstream effects.
Yeah,
We've
right.
checked that.
Maybe it's Caledonian Road or something like that. Okay, thank you. And on page 113 mentions the mayoral forum that's working with Canterbury Council to develop a request for proposal on a regional service delivery review. Is there a timeline for that?
We have to get our information on that today. So that work is underway, and once that information has been collected, then they'll go out to the market for that. So I'm not sure exactly of the dates, but it's underway.
So who's involved in that? So Waimakariri, Selwyn, obviously us.
All of
Anyone-
the Canterbury councils.
So that's who else? Just those three? Or
No, all of the Canterbury councils, so all of the territorial authorities and
Huranui,
councils.
Kaikoura,
13 of them, aren't
Ashburton,
there? Yeah.
yeah, Waimati,
Waitaki.
Waitaki,
13 of them.
Mackenzie.
That's great. Oh, wow. Okay.
We are expecting, we have been waiting for an RFI to come from the DIA, a request for information, because they're doing a nationwide study in 2 parts, and we're not sure whether we're in the first or the second part of that. At this point, they originally indicated we'd be in the second part, but that may have changed, but we are waiting for that. We did expect it last week, so we're waiting, and that's a lot of information required, so we'll just have to see how we can resource that.
So if our part of that is going in today, is everyone else's in, or do you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
I understand it is. I'm not collecting the information, but I understand they have the same deadline, so I'm assuming that
and
these will
then
be in today.
will that be discussed when the mayoral forum meets again?
There will be an update report to the mayoral forum.
That will be this side of Christmas.
Yes.
I'm just thinking timelines, because I know that the tranche 2 emerges by June next year, so I'm just wondering how it's playing out.
Yes.
The Mayoral Forum have going out for a professional services contract to have a look at the impact and what's the best model for the region. And so this information that we're giving them is going to be the foundation information for them to pass on to that professional service deliverer, who will then do the report. And I think the deadline of the report back to the Mayoral Forum maybe February, something like that. There's quite a tight timetable on that.
It's a pretty challenging piece of work in a short time. Well, keep us posted.
I think one of the helpful things for this council is that we participate in the Water New Zealand survey of our water services, so that we do have up-to-date information, and that is recognised by central government as quite helpful for those councils that participate.
Right. Thank you.
I think we've circulated the Hawke's Bay equivalent report. They went early. So again, if you're looking for the kind of output potentially you may get, have a look at the Hawke's Bay water reform report done by Morrison Lowe, I think. It's online, it's on the DIA report, but I imagine that we will get something similar at a regional level.
Okay, that's helpful. Feel free to send us a link on that if anyone wants to.
Okay, I'll get David to send you the link.
That would be really good.
Yep.
Questions, Melanie, then Yanni?
I'd heard through probably you, Pauline, that there'd been a water safety plan in New Zealand that had actually been signed off. Do you know how many around New Zealand have been?
So we've heard of one, and that's for the Huranui Council, for the Culverden supply. So the Culverden supply is a very small supply, and it's a supply that does have residual chlorine. So it's one of the more straightforward ones to be signed off. But yeah, congratulations to Huranui for being the first.
That's helpful.
Yanni?
I know I sound like a broken record on this, but I'm just looking at page 136, and that's the water jobs completed. And what I can see in July and August, I mean, it's not quite double, but it's a massive increase this year compared to what we had last year. Last year we struggled to keep on top of it. I'm really concerned. Like, we're being told that City Care and the staff are working to implement a plan, but I do think we need to actually understand what's going on. And previously, when we've asked questions about this, we also asked if we were recording the reasons why things were failing or leaking, and we were assured that we were. So I really had two questions. One is, or three questions. One is, when are we going to be able to see what that plan is? The second question is, has the introduction of chlorine had any impact on the network? And the third one is, what is the time frame now for people that ring up for a non-urgent leak and an urgent leak in terms of a response? Thank you.
So the if I start at the end, so the time frame for urgent leaks are within hours. So urgent leaks and that threaten ongoing supply are responded to as quickly as possible. The non-urgent leaks, which generally are the ones at the meter box that you see on the footpath, that can be a matter of 5 days if it's a relatively straightforward fix and a repair. If it's a replacement of the meter, which we are doing more of, then it is a number of weeks, and we don't meet the levels of service that we have in the plan for that, because it takes a little longer to do that. But one of the other things about this massive increase is a lot of that is about the backflow work that's happening across the city at the moment. So we've sent letters out to our commercial connections, and we have over 8,500 commercial connections, to advise them that they need to put backflow in place, and in some cases that we'll come and do it for them, or could do it for them. And there's a lot of responsive work and requests coming in around that backflow work that have artificially raised those numbers over and above the usual service requests, if you like. So yes, we are preparing a report for you that separates out that backflow work from the ordinary service requests and the leaks work, and we'll get you some information on those times for repairs. I think the issue with the water meters is that putting in a new water meter, the plan there is that prevents us having to go back and fix a second, third or even fourth leak at that connection, because we replace the whole assembly. It also assists us in terms of better backflow prevention at those connections. So that water meter replacement program is something that we are continuing to drive. So it gives us multiple benefits.
I guess the problem that I've got, what I don't understand, is what's causing all the leakages, and do we have good information about, is it, the skirt repairs that weren't up to standard? Is it the chlorine going through the system? Is it just the age of the things? Do we have any sort of intel over what's actually causing the huge number of leakages? And I guess in particular, I presume we're going to ask for people to conserve water over summer. So, I think it's pretty critical we understand what's going on and have adequate resources to fix the leaks as soon as possible. Because if we're going to ask people to save water, I can't see how they would feel like they should do that when we've got leaks going for weeks.
When we've got visible leaks in the system, that's right. And that is a difficult thing for us, and one of the reasons why the proactive meter replacement, we're hoping will reduce the number of ongoing leaks in the future. That hasn't happened yet, but we are hopeful that it will continue to trend down. But we'll separate out those numbers for you. In terms of the reasons for it, there's no evidence that chlorine has caused leaks at those connections. Most of them are indeed very elderly meters. We've got a lot of stock, back from the 40s and 50s across our network, and those all do need replacing. So I think that's mostly what it is. There's very little in the way of skirt repairs at meters and laterals. So it's not an issue with skirt repairs.
Right, thank you. Hey, just a question on the midges. Do they like fresh water and salt water?
Mostly fresh water, as I understand, but you're probably better to ask the ecologist.
Oh, I could ask her when she comes up. Are there any more questions on Helen's report?
We need to formalise something over the water leak issue. I mean, I'm a bit worried that we may need more resource going into it we may need to make some level of service
Well,
adjustments.
that's a question for Helen. Is the hold-up due to lack of resource, or what do you need?
Yes, some of it is lack of resource, but
Is that manpower, or
we're doing as much
money?
as we can, within the people and the budget that we've got available, and that's why we're trying to look at the smartest way possible to address those leaks.
Is it manpower or the parts themselves? What is it?
It's budget.
Just
So,
the money.
Yeah.
So you've got the meters, you've got the people to put them in.
Well, and it's all capacity as well within City Care. So they have geared up to do more work. We have cleared a whole lot of the backlog. And we cleared some of the backlog through COVID as well, which was helpful.
So what's the timeline to get that program completed?
That'll never be completed. We will always be doing reactive meter replacements and water leak repairs. So if you look at the water supply maintenance contract, 80% of it is reactive maintenance. So we'll always be responding to leaks across our network. It's not that we're not going to go out. It would be extraordinarily expensive to go out and replace meters proactively. That wouldn't make good sense.
We'll come back with a memo about the number, if we know what causes there are, and what's the kind of typical average time of replacement at this point. As Tim's put in the report, or Helen's put in the report, City Care are addressing more of that backlog, so we will see. But yeah, what's the level we need to get it at? There will always be an ongoing level. What's that appropriate level? That's a real...
Okay, well, as Yanni's saying, it's actually the time frame to...
We'll get that in there as well.
Okay, no, that's his issue, that when you get a call because of the leak and the problems that a meter, can we reduce that time frame for getting it fixed?
I think that's correct, and I think one of the other things that we would like to do is when we've made a decision as to whether or not we're going to go and do a repair within a matter of days or a meter replacement within a matter of weeks, that we get back to the customer and let them know that, so that people's we manage expectations really.
But I think, as Yanni's saying, we don't want it to be a matter of weeks. We need to bring that into, a matter of days. So how can we do that?
Well,
and what do you need?
It also has to be cost effective. So what we try and do is batch the meter replacements by area. So it's a cost effective approach. And I think most people, if you say to them, look, it's not a simple fix. We're going to come and replace your meter, and we're going to do it, within this period. I think most people will be pretty happy with that.
Yes, I know, but it's not a good look when we've got a water conservation program running in parallel. That's the downside of that. So I think
we do need to look after value for money for that ratepayer dollar.
Yes, so what you're saying is you wait till you get a whole lot in one area and go in and bring efficiencies by doing a whole lot at once.
Recognising if it's a gusher, we will deal with it immediately.
Oh yeah. Urgent leaks that interrupt supply, we're straight in.
So the water's actually causing damage to other stuff as well, like the asphalt, the pavement, all that just accumulates massively.
So big leaks like that are damaging the road surface will be attended to. It's different to seeping at a metre.
Right, okay. So Dave's going to send a memo out on how you might be able to accelerate that. Thanks, Yanni, good questions. Aaron?
Yeah, it's just to follow on from Yanni's around the public are asking the questions a lot around the why for the leaks, and I think we do need to be really clear about where they've come from, because coincidentally, especially the Toby boxes, just the sheer number seems unprecedented, and coincidentally seems to be around the same time that thousands of cylinders in Christchurch have gone kaput as well. So of course people will start stories, but it's... Or you can put your head in your hands, but you want to just ring some plumbers. They'll tell you the numbers they're doing.
So Helen, is that correct that the leakages have gone up since the chlorination from the meters, necessarily?
I'd have to have a look at the numbers to
and if it's not correct, we need to be really clear about that. We need to get because these are the stories that people make up, so we need to address those rather than wait until...
Simply use some interesting facts.
Yeah, get some facts, yeah.
All right, so can we get you to put that in the memo as well, Dave?
Yeah.
The response time for knowledge of leaks would be great, so people can understand the scale of the problem and what we're doing to address that and can see progress.
I'm sure we've supplied a report like this probably 18 months ago, and I'm sure it was a mixture of causes. There was not one. But look, I will re-get that information from our from our staff and recirculate that.
Great, thank you.
I think one of the other things we can do is map where these failures are across the city, but my understanding is that they're right across the city. So in areas that have never had chlorine, as well as areas that do have chlorine. So,
Right.
But we can review that.
I think I raised this last time, but a lot of people won't even know to look in their Toby box. So maybe if we wanted to get on top of, and I know it will create more work, but actually encouraging people going into summer to have a look and see if the Toby box is full with water. So, because just simple stuff like that could give us a lot greater intel about the scale and the size of the problem.
So we are also rolling out so following the discussions about excess water use and water meter replacement and likely changes and options to consider in the long-term plan, we are rolling out quarterly reading of meters. So we will get more up-to-date information if we've got leaks at those meters. So we will pick those up through the quarterly readings as well.
Okay, that's great. So we'll look forward to that memo again, Dave. Thank you.
And again, I think you'll see the trend as we get a lot more complaints January, February, March, just because the ground becomes dry, and so they're a lot more noticeable. And that's the trend of every year. So I'm expecting them to ramp up again.
Well, it could also be because we're pulling more water through the system as well with the gardens. All right, any more questions? So we have a resolution up there to receive the information in the Three Waters report. Do I have a mover for that? Anne, and a seconder, Sarah. Any more discussion? Right, well, I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. 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 Opposed, that's carried. Thank you very much, Helen. Appreciate that.
And Belinda will
Yes, now we have Belinda's presentation.
have a look at the healthy waterways.
Yes. Welcome, Belinda.
Tēnā koutou kua hui hui mai nei I mihi ana ki ngā mana whenua. Tēnā koutou katoa.
Kia ora.
So thank you for letting me, to be honest, invite myself along to your meeting today. I wanted to start by just giving an outline of what I wanted to cover. The reason I wanted to come is there's been a few things that have been happening nationally and also within council that I think are important for our community outcome for healthy water bodies. So the first is the Ministry for the Environment Action Plan for Healthy Water Bodies, and then we have our council surface water monitoring report, annual report, and our Waterway report cards as well. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about some good news stories, and then about how to improve water body health. But I wanted to finish, I'm just going to briefly touch on these things because I really wanted to spend a little bit of time just in a kōrero so we can talk about the issues and collectively have a talk about how we can work towards this community outcome. So for the MFE Action Plan for Healthy Water Bodies, there's a number of vehicles, so to speak, that have been changed. So there are amendments to the 2007 National Policy Statement for Freshwater Management. So they include things like expansion of Te Mana o Te Wai, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in following slides. Strengthening of iwi and hapu involvement, mapping monitoring of natural wetlands, fish passage, which is a great one to have in there, so it's making it more formal, and either new environmental attributes, so there's things like sediment and fish and macroinvertebrate attributes, which are new for this round, and then amendments of previous attributes such as nitrate, which if anyone's aware of PC7, that's an important thing, Plan Change 7 for the Land and Water Regional Plan. Then there's the National Environmental Statement for Freshwater, which gives limits on farming use, activities relating to natural wetlands and reclamation of rivers, and again fish passage, focusing on construction of new culverts, weirs, floodgates, that sort of thing. And then there's also a brand new NES for stock exclusion, and there are amendments to the NES for water takes. You might be interested to know the difference between an MPS and an NES, because I certainly had to look up on that one. So an NES is regulations under the RMA, and they provide certainty about rules nationally, for specified activities, and they prevail over district or regional plans unless specified. Whereas the NPS are instruments under the RMA, and they give objectives and policies for matters of national importance, and they can give direction to local authorities. So, Te Mana o Te Wai was strengthened in the 2020 NPS. I won't read this, I'll just give you a moment to read it, but that's a definition in the NPS of what Te Mana o Te Wai is. So one of the key things which is come through with the Te Mana o Te Wai is there is a hierarchy of importance when it comes to managing waterways, and this is something that's really new and different, I guess, to the RMA, where it's a balance of all needs and requirements. So number one, health and well-being of water bodies and freshwater ecosystems. That's number one. So that's a really key important thing to know about this NPS amendment. Then comes the health and needs of people, and then following that is the ability of people and communities to provide for their social, economic and cultural well-being both now and in the future. So that one's going to be a really interesting one to see how it plays out. And so there is a little bit of uncertainty how these things will progress into our day-to-day lives, but with the NPS and the NESs, you would imagine that they'll need to be incorporated into regional plans, so the Canterbury Land and Water Regional Plan. And then that will flow down to affecting things that we as a council do, such as resource consents. So, for example, that might be something to do with fish passage, which we need to do already, but it may be strengthened. So then I now wanted to move on to our annual surface water quality monitoring report. Now, this can get a little bit heavy, so please feel free to interrupt me if something doesn't quite make sense. So you may be aware that we have a very detailed monitoring program. So we monitor 42 waterway sites, and it's always handy to have this stat of greater than 11,000 tests so that people can actually see the significance of the work we're doing. So it's monthly sampling at those sites. And for the calendar year last year, the 2019 calendar year, 20% of samples exceeded guidelines, and 98% of sites exceeded at least one guideline. The contaminants of most concern were nitrogen, E. coli, zinc and copper, but there were some issues with sediment at other sites, such as, for example, Cashmere Stream and Haytons. There's just a link down the bottom on this slide too to the full report if you wanted to read it. I was just going to show in these next few slides just some snapshots of those contaminants of concern. So what I'm showing here is actually this really neat dashboard, I guess, we have on our website. So all our monitoring reports are up on our website. You can see the link there. But we also have this Tableau Dashboard where you can actually manipulate what you want to see. So hopefully you can see this, but what I've actually done here is just taken a screenshot. So I've looked at nitrogen. So you can pick a drop-down menu of what you want. There's a map of our 42 sites. And then they're colour-coded with grey not meeting guidelines and green meeting guidelines. And here we have a graph across the different catchments. So our 5 major catchments, Oroka-Kino, Linwood Canal, which is only one site, so that's important to know. Hallswell, it's very hard to see, Heathcote, Avon, and Styx. But I don't want you to get lost too much in the detail. I just wanted you to know that if you can manipulate this, it's quite a neat wee tool. And then you can just, if you look at the graph straight away, you can see, we do have issues with nitrogen in some catchments and more so in other catchments. And the other cool thing is this table up here, which tells you the percentage of all our sites that either meet the guideline or do not meet the guideline. And then it can tell you changes over time, which is really great. So of the ones that meet the guideline, those are improving, those are remaining stable, and those are declining.
Oh, that's really good.
Yeah, so like I said, I'm just going to briefly, I could get lost in this, I'm just going to briefly touch over it. So that was nitrogen, and then this is E. coli. So you can see there just the difference between them, that E. coli really is an issue everywhere. And then we've got dissolved zinc. Dissolved zinc really does follow this thing that has been coined the urban stream syndrome, and you may or may not have heard about it. But in a nutshell, it means that water quality and other things like flows within waterways are impacted more so in urban environments as opposed to more rural environments. So this is just a great example of how that's playing out, because you've got Utakai on the left of the graph, which is more rural, and then you've got towards the end the Heathcote and Avon, which are more urban. And zinc predominantly comes from tyres, from car tyres. So this is just a great example of the urban stream syndrome, and zinc. So zinc is a concern in those catchments, but it's also quite very toxic to biota.
That it was copper from the car tyres.
Zinc and
from
then
the
copper
roof.
from the brake pads.
Oh, yes, right.
Yeah.
And also, I guess you get zinc from the roofs as well.
Correct, yes, as well,
In a
yep.
built-up area. Yeah.
Yep. And so this one is copper. What we've also done is, because the report is quite heavy to read, we create every year a summary brochure. So I've got some here for anyone who wants one at the end. But it's just an easier way to explain to the community the results of the water quality monitoring. We try and do it every year. It's a fold-out brochure. But it also has a lot of things in it that the water quality report doesn't, about what we can do collectively to improve water quality. So that map up there is from the summary brochure, and it's quite big in the brochure, so it might be easier to look at that afterwards. But what we do is create a water quality index for each site, and that gives us a category of whether the water quality is very good right through to very poor. And this map here just has those colour-coded dots. So those red dots there are poor. So again, if you look in the lower catchments, I don't know if you can see my cursor, yeah, in these lower catchments, Avon, Heathcote, more urban, they have more red dots. Then further up, which you can't really see, these are green dots around here, so it's better quality, a better water quality index score. So
then do you just take an average of the 3 contaminants that you mentioned?
No, we look at everything, and yeah, we've created...
Give it a score.
Yeah, that's right. So we based it off a Canadian index, and it's quite complicated because it's not just about what's exceeded, it's how frequently and by how much. Yeah. So the water quality index rated most of our sites as poor. The worst catchment was the Apawahu catchment, and the lowest water quality, you can see the sites there, Curlet Stream, 2 sites in the Heathcote and Hayton Stream. The Utakai River was the best catchment, and the best site was in the Styx River at Main North Road. This is just another manipulation from that Tableau Dashboard, which looks at the water quality index. So you can see over time, this one here looks at the number of sites in each of those categories. And this one here looks at the change in water quality index over time for each catchment. So there are lots of ups and downs at sites. Some improve, some don't improve, but overall, generally, because there's a lot of overlap in these bars here, for the most part, our water quality is staying stable. So the good news is not getting worse, but it's not getting better either. So the recommendations in the report were, not surprisingly, that Hayton Stream and Curlet's Road Stream should remain the priority for stormwater treatment, and we're working on that as part of the Comprehensive Stormwater Network Discharge Consent. And also the middle tributaries of the Avon or Takaro, so Riccarton, Addington and Dudley. There is also a recommendation to look at some investigations into the sources of phosphorus. We've never really looked into that before, but it's quite widespread. We've also seen some initial changes in conductivity and salinity in the Heathcote, potentially due to the dredging. So we just need to keep an eye on that as well, because any changes in salinity and conductivity may result in some effects on the environment because of that change in salinity. And the big key thing that we talk about, but we probably, I think, is one of the number one issues we need to tackle, is how we're going to reduce fecal contamination. Because if we want to have swimmable rivers, basically that is the key issue. And predominantly, as you can see from this photo as well, predominantly we know from the studies we've done that that fecal contamination is coming from waterfowl. So there's obviously a community conflict issue potentially there with having the presence of waterfowl and being able to swim in our rivers. I also put in a recommendation about developing a Waterways action plan, which I will touch on in the next slides. We also every year create Waterway report cards, again in an attempt to try and get some of that heavy science into something that's a little bit easier to understand. And so again, I've got some here one for each catchment here, if you'd like one afterwards. And it combines that water quality index I was talking about, a sediment quality index, because the quality of the sediment, what's trapped in the sediment is important, and then also a macroinvertebrate index, because they are great indicators of the health of your water body. If you've got sensitive species there, then you'll likely have a more healthy water body. So for the 2019 monitoring year, the Otakai-Kino River scored a B, Styx River C, and the other catchments recorded a D. So again, that ties in with the urban stream syndrome. And I might take the opportunity to say, this is really common. We're not doing anything different to anybody else around the world. It's urban issues that everyone is dealing with around the world. We're no different. And in fact, we're really doing really well with our monitoring and thinking and getting through, hopefully getting through achieving that community outcome eventually. So, good news stories, because I know some of that is a little bit depressing sometimes. So we have many threatened Mahingakaya species in our waterways. So this is something that we really need to remember. We haven't passed our tipping point. There's still a lot going on in our waterways, and it gives us a lot of hope that if we improve the health of our water bodies, that we will be able to, really get those species to thrive even more so. So we have waikota, we have kakahi, we have tuna, we have inaka, just as an example. But also we have some really important spawning grounds for some fish species. So kanakana lamprey, it's a picture up there on the top left. It's really hard to find spawning sites for lamprey. You Niwa struggle to find them, and we have one in Christchurch, which I'm sure you probably all know about because it's resulted in effects on a council project. And also we have one of the most extensive inaka spawning grounds nationally. So because of all those reasons, we have many sites of ecological significance and Ngāi Tahu cultural significance under the district plan. And then this also feeds into the zone committee priority catchments, both for Christchurch, West Mountain and Banks Peninsula. Because of course I've only just talked about Christchurch City, but there is Banks Peninsula as well. How to improve water body health. On the left of this slide is just a snapshot from the box in this summary brochure, which has a whole list of things that you can do to help improve water body health. So that's things like making sure that you don't wash your car in the driveway and have that zinc and copper end up in the stormwater system. And here it explains stormwater system ultimately goes to the waterway, because we all know that that is also an educational thing that we need to work on. So there's a whole bunch of things there, so I won't go into them specifically. And so the second bullet point on that slide relates to that, also getting better community education and involvement. And as we know, the community are really keen for this. The second thing I want to talk about is something a little bit novel that is something that is a little bit close to my heart, something I'm trying to push at the moment, is developing a Waterways action plan. So we have this community outcome for a healthy water body, and I know what that means to me, but what does that mean to you? And what does that mean to you? Have we actually defined what a healthy water body is? So for me, I'd like to see lots of fish and invertebrates and thriving biota in the waterways, but you may want to go and swim in the waterway, and that's quite different, because you could have, that's just making sure the E. coli levels are low, But if you've still got copper and zinc in there, that can be toxic to fish. So that's not going to achieve my goal for water body health. So it's about understanding what is it we're trying to achieve, everyone's trying to achieve, and then also working out what are the different levers that we need to pull to achieve those goals. So for example, if you go with the goal of improving biodiversity, we have a lever, of course, for reducing stormwater contaminants. And that's a really important lever because stormwater contaminants have toxic effects or can affect another way, biota. But it could be that we could remove all contaminants from stormwater in a lovely ideal world, and maybe we still won't reach our goal because we've drained a swampland, we've channelized everything, and we've taken away a lot of the habitat that these fish and species need to thrive. So if we probably need to have a lever as well about habitat availability, and if we don't pull that, then we won't get to our overarching goal of improving biodiversity. And so the idea of this plan would be to understand what those levers are, and also you might spend a lot of money pushing a lever, and it might not do a lot really for the amount of money that you've spent on it, whereas you might pull another lever and it really has some significant results in the water body. So that's something that I think would be really useful for us to get a handle on. And we, as part of the comprehensive stormwater consent, we need to have an investigation about when we would expect to see a response in the receiving environment. And this is something that I'm thinking about doing first because it ties all into that. Because when you expect to see a response in the receiving environment when you pull the stormwater lever, might be affected by whether you pull the other levers as well. So, also, of course, capital and operational projects, we need to keep on with our treatment and prevention of stormwater and other discharges. There are huge lag effects to doing that kind of work, so it's going to look like, there'll be some short-term gains, but maybe it will take a while to see those gains, so we have to keep positive on that. Waterway planting and restoration, this is a big one. I think that's the lever that we need to do more pulling of. And then also reviewing practices just to make sure that we're doing things as best as we can to improve water body health. So example would be that slide on the left, that's removal of aquatic vegetation. And sometimes we might remove fish when we're doing that. So we need to have an understanding, do we remove fish? Is there a better way we could do it? Because if we do remove fish and we look at that pile, that's a little bit worrying. So we just have to go and have a look and think, could we do things better, or do we even need to do things better? And the other picture on the right-hand side is, I hope you'll find interesting. I don't know whether it's just because I'm a wee bit nerdy about it, but this is a waterway restoration project, and you would have known about it as well as in the Kapatahi. So we realigned the waterway, the council paid for the majority of that, I think, to avoid that stretch of waterway being piped for a significant distance because of the motorway. And so that's actually construction of fish habitat. So this is construction of the channel before there's water in, and then that's a log that we've embedded in the bank, which creates an overhang and hidey hole, and basically a location for fish to hide, using something that would naturally be there. So that's what I want to talk about today, and then I'm just really keen to have that kōrero.
Well, thanks, Belinda. That's really interesting. How does this fit in with the community water partnership?
Yes, yeah. I am probably not the best person to respond about that. Clive Appleton is the person that's involved in doing that, but it's very integral. And that was identified in the comprehensive stormwater consent, and that's why that's come out as part of an investigation project or condition as well as part of that. But yes, Clive Appleton would be best to give you a brief on that.
Do you work with him too?
We do work closely. Yeah. I think I'm not sure where it's at in terms of getting off the ground. I don't think it's as easy to get off the ground as maybe you would think it would be, but I am hoping that it will start.
Yeah, I mean, because you've mentioned community participation a lot in here.
Yes.
The zone committees focus on community participation,
Exactly.
and so does the water partnership. It seems to me these three things should come together.
Yeah.
And get the best benefit of that we can. And also, you identifying the priority areas are really important too.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, the zone committee have in the past, every year they get this tour, and actually I'm going to the next one, the 29th as well, so they'll have an update. So my understanding is the priority catchments like Addington and Riccarton have been based on this.
They're still there. I think they diverted some from the Haytons over to Otakakino, which was just starting to degrade, and they thought, we'll get in here and arrest that degradation quickly, rather than wait till it gets really big. So there's that kind of mentality as well to play with.
And they're really good with that. That was, I helped push that one. So
So questions, Andrew, Tim, Yanni?
Thank you. I've got two questions, if I can. You make the comment, of course, there's Banks Peninsula as well.
Yes.
I note that all of the monitoring sites are in Christchurch rather than on Banks Peninsula. So I guess there's a question as to why that is, but probably of greater concern, the improvement actions, the initiative for improvement, are they all in Christchurch as well, or are some of those on Banks Peninsula? And I guess that begs the question, if not, why not?
Yeah, so traditionally this monitoring was under past consents, which were things like the STICS, Stormwater Management Plan. So with the new comprehensive stormwater consent, there are sites now that we are monitoring in Banks Peninsula, but that monitoring only began this year. So from next year we will be reporting that. Also, that consent is only limited to settlement areas, so where there's a stormwater network. So there are not very many sites because of that, because it's either there aren't many settlement areas, or some of those waterways in those settlement areas don't flow all year round, so they aren't possible to monitor. So I think we have about 6 surface water quality monitoring sites around that number, so not too many. But we also now have some more coastal sites, both within Christchurch, for example, in the Avon Heathcote Estuary, and over in Banks Peninsula like Akaroa.
Great, thank you. And then second question, to what extent is this work reported to or joined up with the work of the zone committees?
Yes, so every year I go and present this information to them, and we work collectively. We work collectively throughout the year between ECAN staff and CC staff, and then that folds into the zone committee as well. And I know they have individual working groups, so we're available to help with that as well. So I feel like there is no gaps in knowledge in terms of, I feel like the information is free flowing, but maybe Pauline would have a better response on that. But yeah, and I must also say, I forgot to mention, which I think is important, with that Waterways action plan and the goals, in the back of my mind, you would start with the Canterbury Water Strategy management targets and goals as well.
Great, thank you.
Right, so when you say you're going to the zone committee on the 29th with this presentation?
No, so every year I usually just do a summary, and I have it here. It's more of a catchment summary. So it goes into the agenda meeting, and then I basically just be there for the discussion part.
Well, I don't see any reason why you couldn't do this.
Yeah, well, it's already written,
Why not? Well, it's good to see the visuals as well. I think it helps people understand it.
Yep.
Tim?
Thank you, just a couple. So I presume you're working in with the Pawaho River Network, is that?
Yeah, so we as Christchurch City work with them, I guess, and the water community partnership will be a big thing for them. I work with them on and off, but I spend the majority of my time doing the monitoring and making sure the results are right. So there's only a small part personally for myself, but the council does work with community groups as well. We work a lot with community groups for restoration projects. So we work, for example, with Cashmere Stream Care Group.
Yep.
And so, of course, that ties into the Apapa Heathcote River Network Group.
Thank you. And do you also know, some time ago, ECAN was struggling to monitor the sediment runoff from building sites, and so our building inspectors have been doing that, and yet they're not warranted, so they can't really do anything about it. They can just report. So I'm just wondering, has that moved forward at all? Do you know anything about that? Because I'm just looking at, obviously this is a major issue for the Pawaho, and it is mentioned in your report as a major issue. So I'm just wondering, there is a gap there, and I was wondering, does anyone know about when it's going to be filled?
Yeah, again, I only have a cursory understanding, but we can certainly get somebody else involved in that to give you an update.
If we could get that, that would be good, because it just seems a bit ridiculous.
Oh, Brent.
Oh, Brent.
I just happened to be here.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, thanks for dropping in.
Can you come up to the table, Brent, please? Sorry.
There is a fairly detailed staff project underway at the moment, working pretty hard on filling that gap, and it's partly related to the conditions of the comprehensive stormwater network discharge consent. Control of the sediment runoff from those building sites is a really important part of that. There has been a problem with the monitoring of those sites in the past, and so Buster's team are working pretty hard on filling in that gap.
Yeah, and I mean, and I know that, but there was a comment made some time ago that ECAN hadn't warranted, because they've got the authority, but our Buster's team are doing it to assist, and it has been poor, but they haven't been warranted by ECAN. That's my understanding. And so can you...
Yeah, the solution they're working on doesn't require that warrant from ECAN. It's this council doing it in order to achieve this council's statutory obligations under the Building Act.
So do you know the timeline on that? Because it is a major issue with regards to their power.
No, I don't, but I can find out.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Yeah, thanks Tim. Yanni? Then Mike.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to check, so the Littleton Whakarapo Harbour Catchment Plan, is that, like when you talk about waterways plans, I guess I know that's sort of possibly different, but is that the sort of thing that you've got in mind, or have you looked at that as a kind of example of something to do to address holistically the impact on waterways?
I know, yeah, so I was more thinking of it as more an overarching, I guess, approach to managing waterways, whatever the catchment. But we will have to have some consideration on differences between catchments.
I guess the frustration from where I sit is to see Heathcote continually be labelled one of the worst, and yet just not seeing any tangible action. And I mean, it's just kind of knowing where to start, because you know we've been on walkabouts with the zone committee, and we get minutes from zone committees, and we've got the global stormwater discharge consent, which doesn't seem to address, I guess, some of the more holistic approaches that we might take.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I guess that's where my thought was coming from for that plan. But of course, there's also cross-agency issues as well, and having that community buy-in as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I just ask like one really dumb question, which is, like, we've got these rivers, and we've got just a district plan that controls activity, land use activity. Have you looked at the district planning in terms of what we might be able to do to improve the water quality? Like, is there any relationship between the types of activities that we're enabling alongside the rivers and the water quality that you're seeing?
So I think for the district plan, I was involved in the review, but primarily centering around waterway setback consents. Right. So that's building, filling or excavating within the defined setback of a waterway. And I think that's really important because that's where you get encroachment on the waterway, replacing where a functioning riparian margin should be, but also that covers realignment as well. So I think that's really important, but there is always a constant battle between needs as well. But unless there's a district plan review and there's something specific around that, everything else is sort of not really something that I'm involved in. But we do also have our Stormwater Bylaw as well. And again, I'm not the best person to be talking about the bylaw, but I know that that is meant to also be a vehicle to help with discharges, as well as obviously the comprehensive stormwater consent.
Say like the Heathcote Apawaho River, how much setback do you think we should have?
Well, it's all defined already in the district plan, and it varies depending on the location within the Heathcote. So you have a larger setback in the lower reaches, because the setback assessment matters are not just to do with ecology, but they're also amenity, landscape and flooding. So obviously down the lower reaches.
So Tunnel Road, like that tunnel, I guess I was really interested in that Tunnel Road bit being really bad, and what we could do to address that, and I know there's a lot of development happening there, and there's been a lot of issues.
It's also at the end of the road, so to speak. So it's collecting everything that's coming from the upper catchment. But it's one that, with the comprehensive consent, we'll be going into a new way of doing things as well from next year, where if there's an exceedance in the attribute levels in the consent, we will have to do an investigation. So, for example, we will be looking at why Tunnel Road had exceeded. So I think that will give us more information, hopefully, to answer questions like that. But at the moment we don't. We just know this is what the water quality is like for this report. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Mike?
Thank you. Firstly, excellent presentation.
Yeah.
Just a couple of questions, because I guess we know that the estuaries are the dumping grounds of the rivers, and obviously that's under the regional council's remit. But in terms of the water quality in the estuary, is that being measured, and how are the two, I guess, linked?
So ECAN do measure water quality in the estuary. Most of it is around summer recreational times. As I mentioned before, we've got a couple of extra sites that we've added as part of the new consent, stormwater consent, which are focused around stormwater outfalls, but we don't have, next year we'll hopefully have some information from that. So that's what's happening. And then we also get some data collected on the sediment and the biota in the estuary, which you can use as part of their reporting.
Okay. But do you think that the two are, I guess, well enough connected between, like, because we're obviously doing a lot of work in the water quality of our rivers, which is really important. But obviously we've got the estuary, which is also, I guess, it gives us a really good idea as an overall picture how we're doing with our water quality of all our rivers together, because obviously the catchments flow into one estuary and another one further up. But I'm just wondering if we're well enough connected between the two councils to make sure that we're doing it together.
Well, the estuary and rivers monitoring is part of an overarching document that was written quite a few years ago to make sure that our two, ECAN and CCC, are working holistically. It was done with the Avon Heathcote Estuary Trust, I do believe. So it does need a review now with the new consents, but that really is, I guess, one of the vehicles to make sure, and we do make sure that we're sharing knowledge between us.
But does it, I guess, having two authorities in charge of, the waterways from the rivers and then the estuary, does that actually create complexities?
I guess it does, but I think we have to be clear on the distinction in that we are doing this monitoring as part of mitigation for the activities that we're doing, like discharges of stormwater. And ECAN are doing monitoring to understand the state of the environment for regional reasons. I guess we're unique in, I don't know if we're purely unique, but we're different than most other regions because we have so many waterways because we built on a swamp. I mean, I don't think there's any other territorial authority that has two waterways ecologists, let alone one, because we've got so many waterways. And so we're doing a lot of the state of environment monitoring, where in other regions ECAN would be doing a lot of that. So there is that, I guess, that complexity, but I feel like we are working quite well together.
Okay, thanks.
It's just a very difficult beast. I wish I could give you better answers, but it's such a difficult beast to deal with water quality and improving health. And then also, like I said, it could take time to actually see that what you've done has worked.
And so I guess that actually might lead on to my next question. I guess it's, when you look at the rebuild, one of the things we've done is we've put a lot of swales in to obviously clean the stormwater runoff and that before it goes into the river. So are we seeing anything as in terms of improving water quality from that type of action, or is it just too early to
Well, I think if you look holistically of what's going on in a catchment, we're hoping that we will see those changes in the water quality report, but we also have other measures to look on a more specific site location. So we have investigations that look at stormwater treatment facilities and how well they're performing, and we're just sort of kicking off a lot of that stuff with a comprehensive consent. So that would be a more robust way to see exactly whether a device is doing what it's intended to do. And also the other thing we're doing is looking at targeted wet weather monitoring. Wet weather monitoring is quite difficult to do because you have to be storm chasing. And the lab has to be open to give the samples to, which, you know, so it's always at night on a weekend. And the monitoring that we're doing here is whatever the weather. So we're hoping that some of the targeted wet weather monitoring will actually start to see some changes, because that's when the stormwater is, that's when the contaminants are. Whereas when we do the baseline surveying, whatever the weather, you know, we might not see that, although as you can see, things do hang around. Yeah.
Okay, and just one last question, because there's obviously a lot of different things that can actually pollute our waterways, and I guess if you could choose one thing to actually get the biggest improvement to our waterways, what would that be?
Does it have to be related to water quality?
Anything.
I am a big believer that sediment is one of our key issues, because it's in stormwater, and it so it has aesthetic effects, if anything, which gets people upset, rightly so. Sediment in the water column affects respiration, all sorts of things of fish and invertebrates living in the waterway, but also then sediment settles, and then it covers and chokes the stream bed, and you've all seen what it looks like, and then when you look around, you see what we're doing and why it's getting in there. It's very obvious, but I have to put a cautionary note that we are on a swamp, and so we're not necessarily going to be seeing the Banks Peninsula big cobbly bouldery streams. You know, for example, Cashmere Stream, where we're doing some of the restoration works, you know, we're thinking about, hey, well, it was naturally soft bottom, so let's not make it hard bottom. Because that's also, we're aiming to get some more Waikato in there, so we need those soft banks. And then I guess if you, but I also think we're not focusing enough on habitat. We're channelizing everything, and there's nowhere to live if you're a fish.
Thank you very much.
Melanie.
Mike kind of stole my question, but it was going to be more specific about the Curlett's road basin, and whether that and the Wigram basin have improved anything in Curlett's road stream and Hayton stream and leading into the Heathcote before it gets to Cashmere Stream. Can you tell that yet?
So we've only just started kicking off a monitoring project, which is part of that targeted wet weather monitoring. So we're looking at the Curlett's and Haytons because they are the priority catchments, and of course the extensions or new build to those stormwater devices are relatively new. So it could take time, but we're getting some fancy auto samplers and other things, and focusing on the catchment and working collaboratively with the University of Canterbury and ECAN. So we'll monitor all at the same time, but they'll have their own sites with their own devices, which means that we have really good bang for buck. Cool. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that. And the goal of that is actually to pinpoint to hotspots. So it's not just to see what's happening. Part of the project is to help with the project looking at stormwater treatment, but the other part is actually to pinpoint hotspots, so we can actually start saying, well, hey, these are the pipes where something's dodgy's going on. This is where we need to focus on. And even, trialling some things, some sort of new devices and things like that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Great.
Ian? We're thinking about Hayden Stream and Hewlett Stream, because they're in my ward and there's a lot of concern about them. And just wondering how we could connect young people to getting involved in sort of almost adopting some of these
Yeah.
areas. There is a lot of interest and there's a lot of passion, and I'm sure that, we could do a lot.
Yeah.
And I know there are models for it in other parts, but I'm just wondering where we would start with that.
Yeah, so again, I guess that comes back to ECAN and the Zone Committee, and they're working with some projects with that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then I think there's a lot of periphery things as well. Like I think there's a nature agents program where one of the consultancies works actually with schools and helps them sort of look at a monitoring location and have buy-in. I think Drinkable Rivers are doing that as well. There's a few community groups doing it. And
Drinkable Rivers are more the Avon, aren't they?
Yeah.
The head of the Avon.
They're focusing on that. Yeah, they're working with Villa Maria, I think.
Yeah.
And then hopefully the Community Water Partnership. So I think there's a lot of things there, and we've talked with ECAN before about also we're making sure that everyone's working.
We've got to pull them all together.
Yeah.
Helen, have you got a comment?
Yeah, just to add to that, so Department of Conservation have been part funding a position within parks and education, working with schools, and we've actually picked that person up on a temporary basis and extended her contract to bring together the Community Water Partnership and the schools work around exactly that. So having the local schools working in the local streams. And we've just developed the job description, and it's about to go through the bureaucracy of job sizing and all the rest of it, and then we'll advertise that position to continue working with young people and the broader community, and link that to Clive Appleton's work on the comprehensive consent. So yeah, that work is underway, and we're building on the work that's been done, because of course parks have a very strong partnership, community partnership going.
Do you have an update on the community partnership?
No, not specifically, but we are continuing to move that forward.
Because we've got to sign up to it yet, don't we? We've endorsed it, I believe.
We've endorsed it, but I don't think we've gone through the sort of ceremony of signing it. Yes.
And I think ECAN's the same. But
So
that's excellent news.
It is. Would it be possible, Pauline, to have a bit of an update when that kind of, on progress with that position, and once it's sort of in place?
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah,
and we'll
fantastic.
we'll get Clive to give an update on that.
Thank you very much. Perfect.
Oh, thank you. That's a good report. Yeah, there's a lot. It's a bit like the recycling. There's a growing interest in our waterways, and I went to a good meeting the other night out at. It was the meeting of landowners in the Otakakino catchment, and Arthur Adcock had convened it. He does these ones, but there must have been 40, 50 landowners there, all willingly there, and all doing things with their property, sharing information, because of course they adjoin boundaries. So they're all sharing projects, and it's really, really good to see they're all passionate about the land, and all that sharing the challenges, like the willows out there are a challenge, and the fencing, and changing from heavy-footed cattle to lighter sheep that don't have such a pugging effect on the land at certain times, and a myriad of things that they can do to improve the water out there. So it's just so good to see.
Where was
really
that?
is. Oh, it was at the Papanui Service Centre, where we have our the famous Papanuianist Best Community Board in the city meetings. Number one, yeah. All right. Now, do we have to do anything with this? It's just we don't receive. Do we receive it?
It's just part of Helen's report.
Yep. Oh, we have we
So
received
you've
Helen's
approved that,
report
yep.
yet?
I think you've done all
Okay.
that.
Yep, we've done that.
Hey, Belinda, thank you very much for the fantastic work you're doing, and it's just great to see that data presented in that way. It's very clear. So we'd love to see you back again anytime. Invite yourself back. Sam?
Do we need to provide any formal guidance at the end of that, or was that really just a discussion?
It was for discussion, really, but is there something you wanted to...
Oh, no, I just wondered, because
Yeah.
we're still in the meeting.
It's for information.
Okay.
Yeah. But as Anne said, we've picked up a few things to follow through on this, so particularly figuring out how all these things are going to work together with the partnership and the zone committees and the DOC and our people and the rangers, all this work going on. It's phenomenal. But the data is the key, so that we can get some indicators and see where we are improving or whether we're not, and I'm sure we are. Yeah.
Do you want any of the links that Belinda's talked about? She's got some hard copies there, but there's links to all those reports on our website and things like that. Do you want any of those? Some of you may want to incorporate them into Facebook or something, I'm not sure. Are they useful? The
Yeah, well,
data
yes.
she was manipulating, you can manipulate that all yourself on online if you wish to. So maybe it just maybe to
That'd
the
be good.
highlight pages and a quick description might be useful.
Yep, that'd be great. All right, thank you. Well, that brings us to the finish of the meeting today. So I'll look at James, please, to...
I just said we've removed all our restrictions and the pathway is clear to return to our everyday life.
Kia ora. And I'd like to invite you all to stay on for a 20-minute update